We're developing the largest business for the whole history of civilization. This is that Stevenson, Ford and Boeing have made together. This revolutionary transport system is essential for every country, every city, every family and every man. It is essential for humanity. The development of transport innovation rail SkyWay has taken 36 years and over 7 billions of rubles. For selling the technology, it is necessary to build test sections on which the technology will be certified and demonstrated to the customers from all over the world. For this purpose, in the nearest 3 years, we should invest the assets proportionate to the committed ones. After that, we will become the first in the world transport sector, the volume of which exceeds the Russia's budget several times, and occupy not less than 50% of this market. Boeing is one of the brightest examples demonstrating such facts of history. Empires are to be ruined, the Soviet Union has fallen apart, but its infrastructure, traffic one mostly, has been still functioning, like the Trans-Siberian Railway. That was built a century ago and passed through the revolution as well as civil war and world wars. The track structure of SkyWay is based on the string rail technology. These tracks will serve for the benefit of the people for ages, bringing the profits to those who once have ventured and invested their money into this innovation technology. Being certified, the project of innovation will turn into the project of investment. Then the base of this technology-targeted transport project will be realized on all the continent of our planet. Every investor, depending on the volume of its committed facilities into this technology, will own kilometers or meters of these tracks. As for infrastructure ownership and its dividends, they will devolve to future generations. Inexpensive, safe, effective roads are not required for the state and government officials, but for ordinary people who pay fares out of their pockets. And these people are not just users, they are taxpayers too. So to say, it is required only for us. For this reason, it was decided to start the innovation corporatization at English law on the terms profitable for investors. New investors have the chance now to buy the shares of our company with large discounts. Today, it costs several thousand rubles, but tomorrow it will cost millions rubles. Let's build our future worth living together, comfortable, safe, ecologically clean, with high living standard. Let's build the future, which will be able to devolve to our children and grandchildren for no shame.
Okay, guys, I think we're ready to start. It's like 8:05, and let's just do it. So whoever comes later, their loss. Good evening, welcome to our webinar. Thanks for signing up and attending. So just to start with, I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Lelda Matroza. I am representing Global Transnet UK, which is a sister's company for SkyWay here in London, UK. So just a little bit about myself. I don't want to bore you till death, but I've been following SkyWay for like 1 year now. So how it all started, my background has nothing to do with technology and even more like nothing to do with infrastructure. But like 1 year ago, I invested in SkyWay, and since then I've been following it. And why I decided to join is because my background is actually in film studies. So the history and actually the film industry shows that whatever is being filmed, let's say in 80s, it somehow comes true, right? So let's say my favorite film is Luc Besson, Fifth Element. So when my friend Armand introduced me to SkyWay, I was thinking that, well, it kind of looks like a flying train, and if that has been in TV at some point, it's going to come true eventually. So basically, you probably already are familiar with this project, more or less, hence you're joining this webinar, or if not, I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I can, so it's kind of understandable for everyone. So today's topic is modern technology and innovation in the 21st century. One second. So let's say I would like to start with just a few examples and comparisons. Okay, if you could just maybe, if you have any questions, please do take a piece of paper and a pen so you can write it down, because I might be coming across some information or some names or titles that you might not be familiar with, so you can just take a note and just go and do your research. So what exactly is technology, and what's the framework? How are all they connected? If you're sitting right now in your, let's say, office or your room or your house, you probably have quite a lot of gadgets around you. Let's say, I mean, you have probably TVs, phones, probably have a car, I mean, radios, and we all have them. We all use them. We all have cell phones. We all have computers, because otherwise we wouldn't have this communication that we're having right now. So the point I'm trying to make here is that basically technology is developing like all the time. And if you see this slide, like you can see, let's say, how technology were 20 years ago, that we would have like computer, camera, Walkman. Whoever remembers Walkman CD players, then we would have our watch or pager, and those all would be separate devices. Fast forward 2 years ago, well, let's say we all had an iPhone. Obviously, every other year, as technology is growing exponentially, it's doubling. So we have newer phones, we have newer TVs, like we have like better cars, I mean, cost-effective wise, and also like memory store wise. I mean, let's have a look at, like, let's say, radios for the trains, because obviously today we are here to talk about SkyWay. So why I wanted to raise this point is because, I mean, what frustrates me as a person who kind of follows the future technology trends, I do attend quite a lot of conferences and events, and I speak to a lot of people from the area and from the field itself. And basically what I have stumbled upon is that a lot of technology is growing, and it's growing really, really fast without us even knowing it. And the future is very exciting. But what is frustrating me that we do improve things that are around us, as I mentioned before, which are like phones, I don't know, like CD players, you know, like TVs, but we're actually not paying the real attention to, for example, movement. And movement is very important, because we all, every day, we are going to work, even if it's a car or it's a bicycle or a train or a plane, we are traveling, commuting every single day. Well, at least all of us at some point have traveled somewhere by using a public transport. So my point is this: if this technology grows exponentially, which, I mean, what it means exponentially is that basically it's doubling. So it's not growing in a linear way, but it grows kind of exponentially. So if we are using newest gadgets, why are we still taking train to work, which is probably 200 years old? And the answer is very simple. I mean, there isn't anything out there yet that could be something completely new, because what happens in the infrastructure industry, it is the most rewarding investment-wise, but it's also the most challenging from the technology point of view. So we have like trains, like for example magnetic levitation trains, but to me it still is a train, and it's very expensive to run these trains. So for example, like the modern transportation, like what we have, which is the modern, as I'm saying, kind of modern, because like they might look younger, I mean, in their design, but they actually haven't changed much. So we have the ships, we have magnetic levitation trains that are very popular in countries like China, Japan, and also you have planes. Planes probably, well, they are like the fastest public transport that you could travel with, but also plane tickets are quite pricey, and planes are very, very unhealthy because like they are producing quite a lot of kerosene, and kerosene goes into the air and it ends up in our lungs. So it's not really, I mean, healthy at all. But I mean, if you have to travel, let's say, from, I don't know, London to Berlin, you would most likely use a plane. So for example, transport in transition, like at the beginning we have, you know, like we just had humans as a use of energy source. Let's say 200 years ago, like people were in agriculture, like we would use animal or human labor, and then it would start with maybe like boats, and then we would use horses, and then later on, as the industrial revolution happened, we started to use engine tractors, and then later on we had Stephenson who invented, you know, like the train. But obviously, as the transition happens, like it's time for the infrastructure to get better and change. If we will have some time, I might show you some videos later, but if you Google them, like the history of transportation and like the history of transportation by year 2, then you can just find these videos and you can have a look at them later. So what is the point basically? Like the point is this, that as you probably know, that we are fast moving towards the post-petroleum era. So what does it mean? For like 200 years or more, like the most common energy source to run, let's say, transportation systems, which are probably consuming like the most energy in the world, because as I said, we all move around, we all have cars, we use public transports, buses, and etc. So for 200 years, like the most common energy source was fossil fuels, but obviously nothing lasts forever. So we are fast approaching the post-petroleum era, and people already are thinking about it and have been thinking. For example, Elon Musk, which is the CEO of Tesla car and SpaceX, already like I think 8 years ago, he started to think about Tesla car, which is a car that runs on electricity, because he already knew that there will come a time when we won't have enough energy for all the cars that we are producing. So hence quite a lot of car companies like Audi and BMW are creating cars with hybrid engines. And I mean, there's numerous companies and there's like numerous people who are and have been thinking about this for a while, because I mean, we all understand that we have major global issues. For example, overpopulation, I mean, lack of fresh drinking water, like energy issues, and to be honest, like there's an issue, and if you can solve this problem, I mean, you can save the world. So why am I addressing this? Because if we're speaking about the infrastructure, then Anatoly Yunitsky is the genius of the infrastructure to me, because if I compare him with, let's say, I don't know, Steve Jobs, who created a massive dent in the universe, then Anatoly Yunitsky is actually creating this dent for the last almost 4 decades. So he is the CEO of SkyWay Technologies. He is also a scientist, an inventor, and a businessman. He has written numerous books and numerous essays on public transport. He actually has published 2 books that obviously, unfortunately, at the moment, they're still not translated in English, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it will happen at some point. So he's author of over 140 inventions, author of 18 books, and over 200 scientific papers. So basically, 4 decades ago, I think about like 1978, he has had this crazy idea that, I mean, he's he's very into, let's say, sustainability. So the conventional rail is not sustainability, because I mean, when you are, let's say, it's very simple. When you're digging something in earth to build a road, it's expensive and it harms the nature. And we all know that when you harm nature, it strikes back. Hence, we have earthquakes, we have like tsunamis, and all these problems come because we're affecting earth. Hence, the global warming also. So he already knew that, let's say 4 decades ago, and he decided that, okay, how we can avoid this kind of disaster that's actually like coming onto us, because I mean, it will happen eventually. So if we have, let's say, a plane, and then we have the train, so we're using sky and we're using like the earth, what if we can just be somewhere in the middle, right? So he had this crazy idea, what if we elevate the transportation as we see it today? So it took him about like 5 years to actually calculate how it could be possible, because obviously it's not easy to come up with some crazy ideas. It is easy to come up with crazy ideas, but I mean, idea is just an idea until it's implemented. I'm sure you all can agree to this. So basically, how it would work, just a simple example for you guys. So basically, if you have a car, just an average car, you would, let's say, 10 liters of petrol would take you X amount of miles or kilometers, right? And if I, let's say, compare SkyWay, which could take up to 500 kilometers per hour at the maximum speed, and if I can compare it with one of the world's fastest cars, which is Bugatti Veyron, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not information, but let's say it's 432 kilometers for Bugatti. So, but it's a very expensive car in the first place, and secondly, it's very expensive to run this car. So basically, why it's so expensive? Because of the friction. So if the car takes up to 450 kilometers per hour, it might crash because of the CX and all the frictions, and it's physics basically. But what happens in air, right? Let's say you have a plane and the air goes all around it, and it uses, let's say, less energy. So if you elevate something above the ground, it could go with the same speed, but exactly 12 times less energy consumption, which I think it's very, very great. And you probably are thinking now, yeah, but how is this going to save planet? Because it's still going to use petrol. Well, it's still going to have, at the beginning, at the first like implementation stage, it would still have like the same kind of approach as the conventional train. But I mean, it's going to save energy, and it's just to start with, and then eventually it's going to be able to use solar and wind power. But obviously we would need to get to that stage, because like the prototypes, the first models are always a bit well, old school, but it still has some old kind of techniques. So basically, why I like this project, because let's say if I compare it with the conventional train, then I mean, you don't have many kind of possibilities there, because it's just you would have to dig a road, and then you would have to plan, and then you would spend so much energy, time, and money on it, and you would probably not really deal with any overcrowdedness in the cities, because I mean, how many people a conventional train actually can take? I mean, not that many if you calculate. So, but SkyWay offers fast-speed trains, public transport, and cargo. So basically, fast-speed trains would go up to 500 kilometers. It would be, let's say, from city to city or to country to country, and it would have enough energy for up to 10,000 kilometers, and it would be like fast, safe, and just really comfortable. Cargo, I think it's one of the beneficial ones also. That, I mean, for example, why I do like this, because SkyWay can be implemented pretty much anywhere. You don't need to think about how I'm gonna like do this in a jungle or like by a seashore, because you don't have these problems, because it does not affect the soil, because it's based on pillars, strings, and so yeah, so basically it's just elevated. And you might think, how can it hold so much weight? It's also know-how, so there's some information I cannot expose, and there's so many things I don't know myself, but the idea is basically that, as you can see those strings on the screen, basically in those pipes you would have a lot of small strings, like metal strings. Let's say your hair on your head is very fragile, but if you pull your hair all together, they can hold a lot of weight. So it's common sense. So here's like a very similar principle used. And then of course the last one is the public transport, so which could go up to 120 kilometers per hour, same as cargo, and could be implemented in inner cities. So let's say megapolis like, I don't know, London, Tokyo would be very beneficial to have this kind of transportation, and we actually have orders from East already, but that's a story for another webinar. So the benefits of SkyWay technology, well, the decrease of capital and operating costs, which is, for example, it is much cheaper to build it and to run it. So access to new and remote territories, islands, mountains, and seashells, reduction of repair costs and work, reduction of net costs in comparison with high-speed railway, magnetic levitation trains, and aircrafts are at least 5 times lower. I think it's awesome. So obviously, as I mentioned before in the webinar, eventually SkyWay will be able to run on solar and wind generators. And this is great because I'm a huge nature fan, so I am only up for this, because if you don't harm soil, that means you don't harm animal world, and animals can actually migrate, because statistics show that by 2035, 1/4 of the animal species will be extinct, and no wonder, because we're turning the world into concrete jungle basically by just building roads and houses and etc. So I mean, there's no place for animals to actually be in. And obviously global warming is a huge part of it, but that's, again, it's like a vicious circle. When we damage like the nature, you know, we actually get something back for it. Stability on ice, glaciation, snowdrifts, fogs, and dust storms, and sandstorms. So yeah, I mean, stability to natural disasters like hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, and tsunamis. And you probably think, how this kind of very fragile-looking infrastructure could actually handle this? Well, the answer is pretty simple, because A, it's elevated, B, it would have a similar structure and technology as, I think it's called anti-levitation, where actually the pillars, they would be almost a little bit like floating, but in the ground, which means that we're not affected by any, let's say, tsunamis. So I know that in China and Japan, they use this technology for their housing. So why I have Mazda on this slide? Because basically we do have verbal and written agreements with Arab Emirates regarding SkyWay technology. And